A few months ago, I got into a motorcycle accident. I broke my spine and needed surgery to fuse several vertebrae. When they were wheeling me into the operating room, I noticed two men standing in the corner of the room. They didn't look like surgeons at all. No sterility, no proper clothing. They seemed completely out of place. Looking back, I realized that those were my grandfathers. One died in a hospital and the other during surgery. I'm sure it was them because my parents told me this story. While my 11-hour surgery was going on, they were in the hospital cafeteria. Dad suddenly heard his father's voice, telling him that everything would be alright. He shared this information with Mom, and they weren't surprised at all, because Mom had also distinctly heard her own father's voice, clearly telling her that I would be perfectly fine. And all of this happened in the middle of the night, when they were in a completely empty and quiet cafeteria. I've never told this story before, let alone to the whole world. In my grandparents' living room, there was a very beautiful painting of my aunt hanging on the wall. And yes, she's alive. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I spent the night in her living room and suddenly heard the painting start talking to me. It was my aunt's voice, and she spoke to me just like she would in real life. What was strange was that I wasn't scared at all. I was calm and even talked back to her, even though I knew perfectly well that paintings can't talk. At some point, she told me to wake up my grandpa and tell him she wanted to talk to him. So I went and woke him up. When he realized I was talking about the painting, he got really angry, started yelling at me, but then suddenly fell silent and stared out the window. His eyes widened, and he told me to hide in his bedroom and tell Grandma to call the police. Then he took out the pistol he kept in the closet and ran outside while Grandma was calling the police. We heard 2 gunshots. A few minutes later, he came back and said he had wounded one of the guys who were trying to break into the house. He shot him in the arm, but they all ran away. He said that 3 teenagers had escaped from a correctional facility 20 miles from us. They ran through the woods and ended up at Grandpa's house. Their plan was to steal whatever they could and, if necessary, take us hostage. But that didn't happen because the painting of my aunt woke me up and told me to wake up Grandpa. That kind of reminds me of something my father told me. It happened to his friend. My father's company had branches abroad, either in Haiti or Borneo, I can't remember exactly. They offered good bonuses to those who agreed to relocate. One of my father's friends, let's call him Ted, was single at the time and accepted the offer. Perhaps it's truly important to fully understand this particular story. One mature grown man recounted it to another equally mature grown man, and neither of them possessed any significant mental issues or an overly active imagination whatsoever. So, Ted moves. Gradually, he gets used to the local culture and religion, which had elements that seemed strange to him, like voodoo or witchcraft. He even starts dating local girls. Because of his relatively high income by local standards, he was quite popular and, to put it mildly, acted like a ladies' man. One day, he arranges a date with a girl, but forgets about it or changes his mind. In the end, he just stands her up. He doesn't think much of it. A week later, he hears from someone that she's angry with him. And he's told that this isn't the kind of woman you want to mess with. Rumor has it, she's some sort of voodoo priestess or practitioner of the dark arts. Ted didn't believe any of it and wasn't scared. That weekend, he had some business to take care of, so he stayed in a hotel for one night, on Saturday. The room was just like any other, a faint glow from the alarm clock and other electronics, the noise of the city, cars, sirens, people. Ted goes to bed. A couple of hours later, he wakes up. The room is freezing cold and completely dark, as if his eyes are still closed. The city sounds are gone. Ted, a grown man, told my dad that the scariest part wasn't even that, but the feeling in the room. There was something there, something evil. He could feel real evil, physically. It was close by, but he couldn't see it or hear it. It scared him out of his wits. He pulled the blanket over his head like a child and started reciting the Hail Mary from the Catholic Mass. Halfway through the first prayer, that presence vanished. Ted didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I don't remember exactly when, but after some time he went back to the US. I have an uncle who is a priest. He doesn't have the right to reveal the contents of the secret church archives about the supernatural and demonic. But once he said that there's stuff in there that would scare the crap out of you. All through my college years and for a bit after, I worked as an orderly in a nursing home. I spent most of my time in the Alzheimer's ward, the hospice, and the general ward for those individuals who truly couldn't take care of themselves. My first workplace was especially creepy. It was in the town of Sushenter, Iowa. It was an old hospital that had been converted into a nursing home. Picture a school from the 1950s. Lots of granite, brick, and sturdy ceramic. The building was very beautiful. As far as I know, it was later demolished and a new facility was built in its place. One day, an elderly woman was dying. She was already semi-conscious. At the foot of her bed was a sink with a cabinet, and on it, besides the usual items, there was a small glass of water. Whenever she briefly regained consciousness, she would point to the end of the bed and mumble that a little girl was about to knock over the glass and that someone should tell her not to misbehave. Otherwise, she would spill everything. Eventually, the woman lost consciousness completely. The nurse and I, a senior woman with 10 years of experience who had seen it all, sat nearby, talking as we waited for the end. Suddenly, the glass of water moved on its own and fell off the nightstand. The nurse didn't react at all. But I, a 19-year-old guy, was pretty freaked out. I started asking if she saw it too. But she cut me off. Let's focus on the patient, okay? I tried to pull myself together and concentrate on my work, but inside, everything was churning. No one else was in the room except the two of us. The glass had been several centimeters from the edge. The patient passed away soon after, and we went about the usual procedures. A few hours went by. The layout of the corridors was shaped like a big letter T. In the center, where the two hallways crossed, was the nurse's station. I had to spend the rest of the evening there. Everyone was asleep, and I was just passing the time between rounds. The nurse was on another floor. I was left alone. If you looked up at the ceiling, at the intersection of the corridors there was a convex mirror, so you could see everything happening in all directions from the nurse's station. At some point, I caught some movement out of the corner of my eye and looked up at the mirror. Right in the middle of the corridor, about 15 meters behind me, stood a little girl, around 6 years old. She was wearing a light dress, with long chestnut hair. She was doing some kind of slow, aimless dance, like kids sometimes do when they're just having fun. I nearly lost my mind. I got up, walked to the exit of the nurse's station, and covered the right side of my head with my hand so I wouldn't see in that direction. And I ran to the stairs. I found a nurse and told her what I had seen. She laughed and said that over the years, many residents had seen that girl and there was nothing to worry about. It took me a couple of hours to calm down. I kept working there for a couple more years, but I never saw that girl again. I was about 21 years old, and I was home alone. My parents' house had always been a bit creepy. Even my friends noticed paranormal things there. For example, socks would move on their own, doors would close for no reason, and lights would turn on and off. So, I go to bed. I wake up to the TV suddenly turning on at full volume. On the screen was a frozen image that looked almost like Munch's painting the screen. The sound it made can only be described as a high-pitched, robotic screech. The strangest thing was that neither the remote nor the power buttons worked. I could only turn off the TV by unplugging it from the socket. After that, I got back into bed. About 15 minutes later, my heart finally calmed down. I started to feel normal again, and at that moment, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My parents have wooden floors. I distinctly heard 6 steps. I could pinpoint the exact spot by the sound. It turned out that someone in heavy boots was walking down the hallway. I grabbed the knife that was lying next to my bed and sat there in complete darkness, just listening. I sat like that for about half an hour. Not a sound. Then I relaxed a little and lay down again. About 20 minutes passed, and then the same footsteps, in the same spot, again. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened for almost an hour. Total darkness and silence. Nothing. I lay there until morning, until I had to get up for work at 6. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. When the sun came up, I went to check the house. All the doors and windows were closed and locked. I went through every room, checked every closet. Nothing. To this day, it's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me.